The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. Also, on our Instagram and LinkedIn, we're posting daily 60-second news, giving you the updates you need to know about advertising and what's happening. So follow us there. And this week, you will learn from Michelle Edelman. She is the CEO of the agency called Peter Mayer. They're an advertising agency based in New Orleans. They're independent. They were founded in the 1960s. They emphasize that joy can be a business driver. Yes, the emotion joy. And they start with creating a positive workplace culture internally while leveraging emotional connections to enhance their brand impact for their clients. We'll talk about Michelle's journey from the client side to agency life. So we don't hear that too often. So really good advice for you aspiring account folks, especially. We'll talk about joy in advertising and all the advice for those that want to be successful in marketing and in advertising. You'll discover how Michelle's agency has quantified the impact of joy on a brand and their success through using that. And that's through a concept they called the joy factor and how it directly influences consumer behavior. If you like what you hear, please give this episode 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It goes a long way to help us to continue to grow and get amazing guests like Michelle. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Michelle Edelman, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Gino. How are you doing?
Doing well. Where are you calling in from today?
I am here in 70-degree New Orleans.
That's nice.
A beautiful January day.
70 degrees today. Incredible. And that's not for just the Super Bowl, correct?
We're lucky that those things are coincident, but yes, We're very excited to host the Super Bowl in a week.
And I will be cheering for the Eagles. Thoughts on that?
I think I'm with you, although we love to hate both of these teams, I think. So I guess the blessing in disguise is that one of them is going to lose.
Well, we will find out. You are based in New Orleans. We're going to be talking about you. You are the CEO at Peter Mayer. Really, then we want to understand who you are, what you're up to today, and then your advice for the next generation and some other fun questions intermixed. How does that sound for an overview, Michelle?
It sounds like it's going to be the best part of my day.
Heck yeah. So, Michelle, I think, real quick before we get into it, can you describe who you are outside of work? What do you like to do? Who are you as a human? Then we'll get into all the work stuff.
That's a really good question. I guess as a human, I love to experience like the experiences and culture in the world. I guess in everyday life, it's the city, right? So there is a celebration and a holiday for everything in New Orleans. So you can do just about, you can not repeat a restaurant here in a year if you ate out twice a day every day. You could, there's a parade for everything. I'm a part of a dance group here that performs in parades. It's a way to give back to the city. It's a way to actually give back to charities to prevent and help victims of domestic violence here in the city. And what's really cool is that many people that live here have similar pursuits, where they have an art pursuit that's really active outside of their role in their work, and they love giving back to the city itself and just enjoying the city. So that's my kind of everyday answer. But I really love being out and about in the industry as well. You can find me judging award shows or visiting search consultants, or just hanging out with It used to be very different where rivalry in the ad industry was very cut and dried. And now I think we're all very much collaborative and we want to share stories and we want to help each other. So I have a couple of groups that I belong to with CEOs of other ad agencies and, visiting with those folks and looking at their shops. I mean, it's all just really great growth opportunities. So that's what I do in my off hours.
Love it. Love it. And my old boss also is president and CCO in Chicago where we worked. She said if she wasn't in Chicago, the only other city would be New Orleans. And I think it's because of that creative vibe there and just the culture, the celebrations, like you said, the joy in New Orleans is just incredible. So that probably plays a part into the company's ethos as well, which I definitely want to dive into in a little bit. But for now, I want to go right into your break-in. At what point, really, Michelle, did you realize that you wanted to make ads or be a part of the advertising making process in your life? What were you doing? What were you thinking? Do you regret it? Give us the rundown there.
Oh my God. Until you just said that, I didn't know that I had broken in. No, the answer is, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, is that, and I actually talked to some candidates this week, and I always ask people, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Because, surely you wanted to be a firefighter or a ballet dancer. You didn't want to be an ad strategist, did you? If anyone says yes, the interview is over.
See ya.
I wonder about your childhood a little. Yeah, I started out on the client side, and I found that I was managing a lot of agencies at once I got to a certain level, and I was very not happy with the level of insight that they were putting into and the understanding of the customer, the empathy for the end customer. I was working in technology before that was considered cool, and so there weren't a lot of agencies out there that really understood, what it was like to be in or make tech or try to show consumers new behaviors, right? So I ended up building my own insight group inside one of the jobs I had because I just got fed up with it. And during that tenure, one of my agency friends called me up and said, have you ever considered working in an agency in account planning? And I get the point at that point, I'm like, I couldn't plan my way out of a paper bag. Like they're like, no, it's not what you think. So, really, that was the first time I ever even heard of account planning and the discipline of, kind of creative strategic planning, even though essentially that's what I was doing. So later in my career, I was actually recruited to come on to a piece of business that was won at Leo Burnett, and it was a tech business, and they were not used to at that time, like dealing with audiences that were business to business and consumer audiences that had to be educated and entertained about technology. And I found myself in a situation sort of mid-career where I was making a shift onto the agency side from the client side. Now, that is crazy. I felt like, okay, so like we always love to look at like caterpillars turning into cocoons, turning into butterflies. I have to tell you, that animal's going through some pain. I mean, like it was a year of like, what in the hell am I doing? And also creatives looking at me like, what in the hell are you doing? And some of the best friendships I have are from that time, because creatives would just sit me down and say, look, I know I want to help you succeed because you just seem so nice, but like, oh my God, what are you doing? So like, it took a full-on year to figure out how to translate my skills into the creative environment. And like, I don't know that it's a recommended course of action because it's really rough. I mean, I think creativity, strategy and creative is so much about making art point towards commerce. And that is so unique. It's a unique discipline, right? And like, so, not recommended for the faint of heart, but that's how I found myself in advertising. So it's sort of a backwards way of coming in, but I find that so many of the people that I'm interested in advertising like came into it and sort of like fell backwards into it. I think that's what makes us interesting people, and so as a result, what makes us interested in people, and I think that's one of the key ingredients of doing well.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very, I've done a lot of these interviews, and there's seldom the marketing transition into agency life. And I always wonder, because usually the progression is you work agency life and you get burnt out, get tired, and you wonder, well, maybe I could go to one specific brand. Usually the salary might be better on the brand side, a little bit more comfortable, work-life balance. But that was not the case in this situation. You stumbled into agency life there. So you mentioned it took about a year to get your like training wheels off, right? Like, how else would you describe that period?
It was like running through fire every single day and like wondering if I was just going to be like, if I was ever going to get it. And then at a certain point, like something clicked where it became like, okay, I think I've hit my stride. I know how to speak to creatives in a way that is going to lead them to a place where they can be successful. And like, that's all I ever thought about.
What would you tell Michelle breaking into an agency? If you can go in a time machine and you can go right before you go to Leo, what would you say to her?
Don't give up ever. Like it's going to be like scary and you're going to think you're going to get fired like 7 times, but you're never going to get fired. So just keep throwing yourself against it. That's all you can, I mean, like, and that's the thing. I think that there's this kind of before and after culture, what I would call it. Like, you see advertising for weight loss and you see the before picture and then you see the after picture. The journey is rough. And so like giving yourself grace to have that journey and to like, basically just keep at it. I think that's probably what I would have told her, even though she did it anyway. But like nobody else was there telling me, like everybody else was there saying, okay, good Lord, let me I'll just explain this to you one more time. I'll talk really slow so you get it. So I just, and like, I think allowing yourself to be trained by creatives. So like in a creative setting, creatives are they're going to shit on your brief. They're going to send you away. They're going to tell you it's terrible. And that's part of the acceptance process. That could be part of their creative process. And it also is part of you getting better, right? And you knowing how to enter a pressure cooker. You're basically pushing them forward to a blank sheet of paper, which is the scariest thing that anyone faces, right? And so, knowing how to build that empathy and knowing how to like basically get a head jump on that processing and emotions, and knowing that every single person that you're going to deal with is different, and being ready for that. I don't know how you can instruct anybody on that, but just saying stick with it. It's going to be okay. Just keep throwing yourself at it.
Love it. And you did. So now I want to get into a little bit about Peter Mayer today. So for listeners who may not know, can you tell us more about Peter Mayer? I guess like there's so many agencies and marketing organizations out there, 15,000, 16,000, 20,000 plus, who knows what the exact number is, but what sets you all apart? How does your philosophy of leveraging joy to drive business results shape your approach?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, because once upon a time there was a fella called Peter Mayer, and he started this agency in the 60s, and he was an immigrant from Germany, and learned English and went to journalism school and ambitioned his way into advertising, and then started a shop, not unlike Leo Burnett in his midlife. And those were back in the days when you did live reads, and like he had all these stories about like toasters setting a set on fire and things because you had to do stuff live. But his sons took over the business for a good 20-30 years, and then when they were ready to retire, I was head of strategy in the shop. It had been bothering me for a few years that advertising agencies were just really, generally speaking, by and large, terrible to their people. Like, talent has a rough go of it in a lot of the agency world. It is a lot of trial by fire, learning or not learning. You don't really know how to grow your career. There's not really such thing as career pathing. There's not, it's rough out there in some ways. And so I kind of was starting to think in my head, like, wonder if there are great companies out there, right? There are some really great companies. They tend not to be agencies, but what if there could be a great company that happened to be an agency, right? What would that look like? What would that be like? I was starting to think about that for myself. And the opportunity came to take over the agency. And so I thought, all right, I wonder if like some of these ideas I've been having can come to roost and build a really great company. So that's what we set out to do. And so one of the founding principles of taking it over, right, the founding of the 2.0, I suppose, was thinking, how do I make working in advertising a joy for people, right? Because you hear about it being a slog fest and just, so much about agency careers being very difficult. And like you said, people leaving the industry for client side or whatever for work-life balance. Why is that necessary? Why are we losing our top talent to other industries? Why are we afraid of management consultancies supplanting agencies? Why are we afraid of client internal teams supplanting agencies? Why is there not room in the world for agencies and for agencies to be great companies? And so that's where the founding thought really was about the people and the workforce, and like really thinking about, enjoyment. Like I've loved my time in advertising, and I've loved my time in great agencies, even when they weren't being great to me. I just love the industry and what I'm doing. But people nowadays need more than that. I was raised in the, when my mentors were baby boomers, and you just worked. That's all you did with your life, was you worked, and so, I learned that work ethic. But now I'm looking at the next generation, and they want, my God, they want to be a part of their kids' lives. They want to have pursuits. They want to have, and you know what? That's right. They should want a whole life. And so I started to think, okay, maybe building a great company in advertising is about helping people craft excellent lives, and knowing that your passion for work should be part of that, but your passion for your life is part of that too. And that as an employer, we can be transparent about that and support both sides of the coin. And in a city like New Orleans, especially so, because it is an artistic community. It is a creative community. And so when people have those passions and they develop them, they're naturally going to port over into what they do every day. So it really started there. And what made us look at our positioning was to think, all right, we're making this workplace that is about, I mean, I'm in this one CEO group, and I did my business plan, and one of them is very curmudgeonly, and he's like, oh, you're building some sort of creative utopia over there. And I'm like, I hope so, right? I mean, he thought it was a terrible thing, because how's it going to make money? And that's where the question is, how does this translate to the business environment? So we started to study that. We started to study what positive emotional effects have on people's lives. Does advertising play a part in that? Or is that just part of living? Is that part of mental health? Is it part of your station in life? What is happiness? What makes you derive happiness? And what we found was that brands have everything to do with how we're happy in life. They just don't get any credit for it. So if you think about, you had, things in your life that bring you joy, that moment in the day where you go, I feel really good right now. It could be because you smelled coffee first thing in the morning when you woke up. And that's a moment where you're like, that aroma of coffee, I feel good. This is going to be a great day because that whiff of coffee, right? You didn't think that it was a whiff of Starbucks coffee, probably. Now, if you did have that thought, which 8% of people maybe do, then you're much more likely to seek out that brand, to pass by another brand that you wouldn't buy, to pay more for it, to defend it, to be loyal. There's all sorts of things that association of those feelings of joy with a brand does for business. And we've been able to measure it. We call it the joy factor. And the fortunate thing is we've studied almost 7,000 consumers at this point with a variety of industries. And the more we study, the more stable the associations become. There's about an 80% correlation between the joy a brand brings a consumer and their intent to purchase from that brand. There's all kinds of other benefits, but that 80% correlation of intent and emotion it's the most stable, reliable thing that ever gets spit out of the study. So, you know, it's a way for us to go to our clients and say, listen, eliciting positive emotions from your advertising is going to pay off, right? And here's how you do it, and here's how you measure it, and here's how you plug it into your analytics. And like, that is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of marketers, because marketers are concerned, like everyone else, about the next quarter. How do they hit those sales metrics? How do they stay in their seats? How do they explain their results and their expenditures to their constituents, whether that's Wall Street or internal constituents? And when you can show them the connection between this emotional elicitation and what it does in their marketplace, then they're like, hell yeah, we're in this because we want to create great advertising. We know great advertising makes people feel good, but that's not enough. It's not enough for us to just make people feel good. We need to make results. So we've found these correlations, and now we have a real connection between what's happening inside our agency and what we're delivering to our clients. So we say we're unleashing brand joy. It starts with everyone within our building, and that's my target audience is my employee, and making sure that they have everything they need to go out and touch consumers in that way. And yeah, it really has come full circle, and like, we have so much work to do on every front, but it's such a great conversation to have with clients, especially ones that are, I mean, we're in a very difficult, depressive period in culture, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because I saw, the 2024 results revealed low average joy score. Can you talk about that, and how can Peter Mayer help brands navigate those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have more and more people, and everybody's studying this from a different angle, right? We're just using joy as the word that we look at from our angle. Everybody's looking at, the propensity for people to say they're getting enjoyment out of life, that things are better this year than they were last year, that they have hope for the future, that the institutions that serve the world and the country, that they trust them. I mean, as I said those things, you were like, nope, nope, nope. And that's our state of being. Now when you look at metrics, in the marketplace, do we actually have trustworthy institutions? Are we doing better this year than last? I mean, arguably we might be. We just feel terrible. And so part of that is that doom scroll of social media and media that we ingest all the time. And for better or worse, that's the environment in which advertising lives. And so that's where we can do the most good, is to be able to contextualize how to make people happy, even if it's for a momentary fleeting minute where you smelled coffee, and help people be more in the present with that, and give brands credit for having done that. And the more we can do that, the more brands will see the lift from, yeah, that brand did actually make my day a little better. Whether that was because I laughed at it or because it gave me information, it made me feel nostalgic. There's all kinds of emotional levers. But that moment where I can feel that, and we've done studies where we have people write down, when they have these emotions, what was triggering it. A lot of it is what you think. It's like my pet on my lap, or, my computer finally, did what I told it to do, right? Whatever it is that makes you feel like, yes, I've got this now. There's brands that are a part of that. And, we're trying to help brands see that they can make connections from those feelings to where they're going. It's just that we're in an extreme. Now, what's good is we're in this extreme moment where people tend to have a more depressive view of their surroundings, because when they feel joy, boy, they really feel it, right? It's like, oh my God, like that was amazing, right? I just, and it sometimes the littlest things, right? We get joy out of having plans and not making them. What the heck, right?
Yeah.
And feeling like you can say that, right, is fine, right? So there's many ways in which we can impact people's lives, and just making sure that we are on top of that in culture, and we know what we have permission to say and do. We actually, just because the Super Bowl is upon us, we start to look at the joy data, and like, we know from talking with people that we're very much prohibited from hating things now. Hating things publicly is very culturally not, we're not supposed to say we hate things. But in sports, we can say it all we want, right? We can hate another team. We can hate the referees. We can hate the way a play was, a play went. We can hate the angle that someone viewed it at. We can hate some guy's shirt. We can hate a lot of stuff. We are allowed to hate all day, every day in a sports context. And that's why you were like, I'm rooting for the Eagles. And I'm like, I'm rooting against, I'm rooting for not Kansas City is the funniest thing, right? But we're allowed to do that. And so we're publishing some stuff called The Joy of Hate. And like, what's interesting is if you hate something or, you know, it's the other side of the coin of loving it. And so people that are passionate, they bring that passion into every area of their life. So people that are like face painters out there in the crowd, they're more likely to engage in the chicken sandwich challenge that we had a couple of years ago with like Popeyes and what was it? It was Popeyes and it was Burger King or something. But like, you know, they're likely to engage in that, in rivalries, and they're likely to talk about it. They're likely to talk about anything that they can love or hate. It's just passion to them. So it's such a cool thing to be looking at joy in those sort of contexts. Like there's joy in disliking something. And yeah. And so like, it's just the funnest thing to bring to brands and to ask our brands, like, how do you want to talk about this or not? Like, how do you want to engage in this consumer behavior? Because it's going to be really big in the next month, right? How can you be part of the narrative? How can your brand get credit for a moment here?
Right. So to help the brands out, your agency has identified from this study, a couple trends that bring joy, like wellness, civility, a road trip. I know I went on one in 2020 during the pandemic when we were on lockdown to the Grand Canyon with my buddies in an RV. That was the best memory that I've ever had, probably. I guess of these trends, did I miss any that were highlighted in your study? And then if not, which one do you think holds the most potential for marketers in 2025?
I think there was a trend about the need to reconnect with oneself, and then and how that's going to look in the coming year. I think people are. It's interesting because there's two sides of the coin, right? You talked about the road trip, which is a yearning for connection with the outside. The parallel to that is the yearning for connection inside, and the using brands to self-discover. So whether that's the Calm app, whether that's a piece of content that you can relate to, whether that's choose your own ending games and films. All those things are helping me reconnect with and rediscover something about myself. And I think that we're going to be seeing that in a big way this year. And, you know, any brand can really help with that because you can give content that allows people to explore something about themselves. Like, why do you choose the brands that you do? Is it because you feel connected to how it was made? You feel connected to how it affected your family? Like, what, you know, and the ability to help people have that narrative, own it, and project it. That is definitely hugely joyful for people, and showing up in I don't want to necessarily say influencer content, but content that they make themselves that they apply to brands.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess I was just looking at this cup of coffee I have here, and you can probably make a case for a brand. I don't know, I'm not very good at this, but you could probably say maybe the 10 minutes of your morning coffee alone can be self-discovery. Like that's your moment alone. You can think, you don't have to think at all either. That could be your time, that 10 minutes, that coffee. You could probably, you know, convince a brand to do a campaign or do a specific ad around that too. So there's these fun, you're developing these strategies, that strategic ways in for creatives to play with these trends.
Absolutely. And like we call some of what we do is this, you know, kind of exercise called modes of joy. Like what gives people joy is like the trigger of nostalgia or the trigger of alone time or the trigger, like there's a lot of triggers that would yield joy, and that we're just people, like we haven't evolved that much as a species. You don't need to look too far to know that. But like, the triggering of these emotions, there's, we only have a few of them. And so the being able to get there through a bunch of different means, we call that the modes of joy, and that's what creatives have the most fun playing around with.
I like that. I like that. I would have fun with that, and I'm not a creative, so that must be fun for them. I love that. So when you're looking at all this stuff in your career, it's very clear that you understand the importance of the internal branding, internal communications, making sure there's joy within the agency, and then you apply to the brands. And I believe like the business results because of joy. And I believe that's probably because of your time on both sides, the marketing side and the agency side, and your experience there. So makes for you make for an amazing CEO. I could tell that you know what you're doing. But what advice would you give to the aspiring marketers or advertisers who want to create campaigns that tap deeper emotions like joy, or just as to find joy in their own lives in this crazy industry we call advertising? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I think, what I've noticed is that there's a real, like we're all in such a unbelievable hurry. Timelines have become ridiculous. Like I just briefed you and we're going to go in a time machine to yesterday to see what you thought of, right? So like we're so time crunched that I think that a lot of people start to, when they start to ideate or they start to invest themselves in a target audience or a brand or an experience, they first turn to electronic means. Like they want to see what ChatGPT has to say. They're trying to get into sort of the Reddit subthreads and like see what is going on out there. I would encourage people to go IRL. If you're studying a product, go to the environment in which that product is being heavily consumed or purchased, or just have a moment where you get together your friends or somebody not in advertising and go have the experience together and just like wipe the slate clean. And it builds a lot of empathy for the audience very quickly because without knowing too much, you can see what the experience is like, and you're more likely to tap into something raw and authentic as a result of it. I think I see a lot of like over researching. I mean, I just talked half my talk about research, but like there's a lot of over researching where it's sort of like you think that there's something else, some other nugget out there. Like, no, like just you have enough. If you're a student of advertising and you're curious, then let your curiosity guide you a little bit. And I think that's true for anyone. And that's where you have a level playing field. You're human and you've had experiences and interactions with brands, and you're capable of noticing things really intensely. So take advantage of that superpower of being extra human and like just observe and have experiences and then go and research what it meant.
I always say, go talk with the target audience, like call them up or go experience the product with the target audience if you can. That helps so much. But I see students studying this, they spend months on these like spec campaigns or their classwork, weeks and weeks and weeks trying to do so much research. I'm like, just have a call, do an in-depth interview. You'll get a nugget, and then you'll be able to connect it with a cultural moment. An hour-long conversation with somebody that's in the target audience can go a long way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just to get to under that empathy, like you said. So I love that. Is there anything else, like maybe for the marketing people, because you have that too? How do you break into marketing? Like what would you recommend to them?
I mean, I think that, marketing, the tough part about being on the client side is the incredible speed at which you are expected to achieve results. And so like, although this is hard, finding some tools that can be a repeatable process for you is really critical. Like, if you're expected to hit the ground running, in your company, ask questions, ask like, what are the tried and true ways people have been successful in this role? Like, what are some really good examples of, decks or comparison tools or ways in which somebody's built a recommendation that have really worked in this company? And like 9 times out of 10, somebody will send you something that's a construct that you can basically go, okay, I can adapt this really quickly. I don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper. Somebody sent me something that was successful. And so I think don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't be a hero. Like try to be
So,
like
so
get an
different.
get an easy win under your belt, like, and do a lot of listening. I feel like people, I used to see a lot of people coming for informational interviews, and like I feel like informational interviews have become sort of covert ops for I want an internship or I want to get hired. Do some
Hmm.
actual honest to God informational interviews. Like take somebody out for coffee and say like, okay, you're a brand manager. Like how's your week go? Like, what does your calendar look like? Show me what you go through. Like, who are your compatriots and who are the people that you don't see that you have to influence? And like, what's the best part of your week? What's the worst part of your week? And like, ask really probing questions about what it's like to be in their shoes. And I think that helps you like understand what their lives are like, what your life would be like, and how to build those tools. Like, what is the most important thing you're going to have to know to be successful in that role is probably the most important things you're going to have to say in that interview too.
Right. Right. Yeah. I love it. They're different worlds and you experience both. So you have so much knowledge and you shared a lot on this episode. So thank you, Michelle, for that. How can people reach out to you if they want to do an informational interview with you?
Oh my gosh. Like, so I am very accessible via LinkedIn.
Okay.
I actually have connected a lot of people and with a lot of people through LinkedIn. You can toss me an email, but I tend to check my LinkedIn messages more. And like
Yeah.
the best you can do for yourself is to look at people's LinkedIn and like get informed about like what groups they're attached to and what's in their portfolio. Like you're bound to learn something,
Yeah.
I think it's, there's the best advice I can give to people is just, have a point of view. Like it's beyond curiosity is just ask questions. That's not enough. It's have a point of view, know what you like, know why
Mhm.
you and why do you like it? Like why did the campaign that really touched you, that got you interested in advertising in the first place, why did it touch you, right? And how did it touch you? And like what can you do to bring more of that into the world, right? Maybe it touched you because it was provocative and it showed a counterintuitive point of view. Do you love counterintuitiveness, and like how do you go about recognizing that? Do you love, just hilarious slice of life stuff where you're showing a consumer something and letting them laugh at themselves along with you? Like there's so many different things in advertising that people love. Why do you love what you love? That's your ingoing very first point of view is why do I like this? And if you can do that, you can have a conversation with anyone from a top creative to an HR person, and get into a really fascinating, unforgettable conversation.
I love it. Michelle, wonderful job. Thank you again for coming on. I hope people reach out. I wish you all the success with Peter Mayer. I know you guys will keep on crushing it. I'm excited to follow along and hopefully feel some more joy from these brands out there in the world from you all.
Well, I hope so. I hope we can. I hope we work ourselves out of a job. I hope that like joy becomes so prevalent that it's a stupid agency positioning eventually.
For now, it's in demand. So we appreciate you.
Thank
Nicely
you
done.
so much,